So this is Eternal 1.3, which I did a speedrun of earlier today / last night. Yeah, I was, and I had absolutely no idea that I wasn't getting any input. That's just great. Absolutely classic. Anyway, so this is a run that I did. It's a personal best by some 15 minutes, probably. Like, I think it was almost 15 minutes, like within a second of being 15 minutes. This is Eternal 1.3 is not quite publicly available yet, and it's nowhere near finished, but we are going to release a preview build of it relatively soon. I definitely talk to specify type. Okay, let me get this stream chat a little bit narrower so that it... sorry about this. Okay, yeah, there we go. Okay, there we go. Should hopefully not have any further interruptions. Yeah, I'm also trying to get through a whole bunch of information quickly because I already said it, and I'm kind of annoyed that no one heard it, but oh well. So, we're planning to release a preview build of this. I generally tell people to take my estimates of time with a mine of salt, not just a grain, because they usually tend to be wrong. But we are very nearly done with the stuff that we want to do before we release the preview build. Almost everything you see in this particular run is going to be mostly unchanged. There's a couple of tiny changes that we've made to levels since then, but it shouldn't be anything that radically affects gameplay. I think there are a couple of new monsters in the level Genie in a bottle, and I think that's about it. And that would be like a 5-second difference, probably. There are some significant changes that we need to make for levels that do not appear in this run. I will describe the categories for this game in a moment. No, the level is called Genie in a Bottle, but that would be kind of funny. The monsters that I added are just some more fighters and drones, of which only the fighters are even hostile to the player on that level. So Eternal 1.3 is... It's not going to be the most radical remake of this game, or update, I should say. Like, if you are familiar with Eternal Mark 5, and then compare that to Eternal 1.0, they are barely the same game. Like, the story is basically the same, and a few of the levels are the same, but most of them are completely different. In this case, we haven't completely changed most of the levels. There are a couple that are going to be completely remade, but most of them are still going to be recognizable as themselves. But we have changed a lot of the monster graphics. We've changed basically all of the textures. Yeah, thanks. I do really like General Tacticus, who had already done the weapons for 1.2, redid them again for 1.3. The one thing I can say, like, as a possible criticism for the staff is it might be a little bit too smooth. Like, there should be possibly a bit more of a player wind-up, and then, like, you could say that the staff swing itself should be a little bit faster, but it is so smooth that the staff particles or whatever the sparkles just look absolutely spectacular. And basically all of Tacticus animations for this are just... Yeah, exactly. And like, and it's not as thick, and it's so much smoother. Like, the animation, like, I mean, you could barely describe Beetle's staff as even having an animation, honestly. Like, it really was just 2 frames that were positioned in different places. Like, I will give Eternal Staff, or Evil Staff, like, it looks like it hurts. To an extent that I don't think this one quite does. But it like, it's just nowhere near as smooth. And there's something to be said for, you know, like, every single frame, or every single game tick has a frame in this animation, and it looks spectacular. So, I didn't really go into detail about this run that much yet, but like I said, it was a 15-minute personal best. Well, within a second of being 15 minutes. And I think 15 out of the 37 levels were also what would be considered gold splits, which is the fastest that I've ever done them, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I was not expecting to be that far ahead in so many levels. To be fair, I haven't saved splits every single time I've attempted this, so there might be 1 or 2 levels that, if I had saved the correct set of splits, would not have been gold. But at least they are really, really close to being, this is a really, really good run. But there definitely still is potential for improvement. That level that you just saw, Septococcal Pfhoryngitis, is the second gold split in this run. The previous one, Deja Vu All Over Again, was also a gold split. I think Deja Vu was probably a gold split because I think I only recharged that one time, and that saved a lot of time. And I think also I was able to ignore a lot of the fighters, so that helped. And then I think this Septococcal Pfhoryngitis was a gold split because I was able to, again, avoid recharging at the end, and I was able to... Well, I have decided to ignore the Enforcer that I used to deal with, in previous runs, because I don't think I needed the ammo that the Enforcer drops. So I was just able to cut out some running around. This level Dysmentria and the previous one are both levels that in the speedrun you don't really have to explore very much of them, so they're pretty short levels in the speedrun. You can do a lot more on these levels if you want to, but it's just kind of optional. Like, if you want to explore and fight all the monsters, you can do it. If you just want to clear out the levels quick as possible, you can do that. This level, Dysmentria also has been retextured pretty heavily. Actually, all of these pretty much have been pretty heavily retextured. One complaint about previous versions of Eternal, which I pretty much agree with, is that they were too monochromatic. And so one thing that I have done is I've tried to go through areas that were kind of uniform color, or that were entirely grayscale in many cases, and go through and retexture them so that they're not. There are also some textures in this version of Eternal that were not used in previous versions at all. You probably noticed there were some rocky textures outside in the opening part of this level, Sakhmet Rising. Those textures replaced some textures in previous versions of the game that we just weren't really very happy with. There was a light texture that didn't really fit and that wasn't used very often. That was replaced with that square rock texture. Not the one here, the one that looks, rocky. Yeah, and then there were some of those other textures kind of replaced this sort of mechanical texture that we felt was kind of extraneous. Honestly, these new textures that Pfhor... Yeah, I don't know that we really redid much of the player sprites in this version. We have the new weapons. Like, the Eternal weapons are, like, we have the sprites that use... The sprites use the correct weapons for this game, but I don't think that we really, like, redid the player's appearance other than the weapons themselves. But, I don't think that player sprites really need to be redone that much. Yeah, this part of the game is set during the time of Marathon 1, so we figured, we should have most of the Marathon 1 characters. There are some of the automated drones as well. I don't know if you actually do see them a little bit later in this run. Also, General Radix redid all of the Pfhor sprites, so that we could have, like, a more consistent visual appearance amongst them throughout the game. I think they turn out really spectacular. I'm particularly happy with the Enforcers and the Hunters, but they all look really good. Yeah, like, the Trooper and Fighter, I think, look a bit beefier, which kind of fits. Like the trooper almost looks like a skeleton practically in the original games, which, like, given as much punishment as they can take, doesn't really seem appropriate to me. I think it makes more sense for them to have, you know, heavier armor. And the other thing is that you can kind of see... one thing that we liked about the Marathon 1 Trooper sprite that was not really present in the Marathon 2 sprite is that you could sort of see the Trooper through their helmet in Marathon 1 and in Marathon 2. So that's kind of fixed in Radix's redesign. Excuse me. This level, by the way, which I barely talked about, maybe that one wasn't a gold split. This next level was a gold split. Yeah, like we tried to kind of get it halfway in between, I think, where you can see the trooper's face through their mask, but it's not like it's not as clearly visible as it was in Marathon 1, which I think Marathon 1 overdid it a little bit. Like it was cool that you could see their faces through their helmets, but it was like it shouldn't have been quite that visible. I think it's kind of a nice happy medium here. I think my gameplay on this level worked a lot. I was able to get through it a lot faster because I was probably made better choices with weapons to use, and I also just did things in a more efficient order in some cases, which I'll describe when they happen. But in particular, so there's this segment coming up in a moment where you'll notice I just kind of run through here and hit this switch and then go back and deal with the enemies. Before I would deal with the enemies and then go hit the switch, which is just a little bit not... I mean, it's taking some time just to wait around for the enemies to come out. I don't think you could hit that switch in advance in 1.3.1. There's a few cases where we just kind of redesigned things to make it a little bit more convenient for the player, and this is one of several of those examples. On the other hand, the staircase in previous versions of the game suffered from a strange engine quirk. Monsters cannot travel through lines that are shorter than their diameters as described in physics. So most of the monsters in this game have a 0.5 world unit diameter, which basically that means that it's the height or repetition. The height or width of a texture repetition is a world unit. The player is 0.8 world units high and has a 0.5 world unit diameter as well. So if a line was shorter than 0.5 world units, then the vast majority of monsters would not be able to cross it. The problem with that staircase was that most of the lines on the staircase, for the stairs, were 0.375 or 0.25 world units. So I redesigned that staircase so that all of the steps are diagonal, which means that most of the lines are now 0.530 world units. There are some lines that are shorter that they can't cross through, but they always have a 0.5 world unit line going either horizontally or vertically that they can cross as well. So basically, wherever the monster is, they can now either cross the horizontal or the vertical or the diagonal line, and now they can move up and down the staircase. So if you're wondering why the monsters were so weird, it's entirely possible. Like, I think it could very well... It's really weird. I did not even know that quirk of the engine even existed until last year. So there are some areas where I just had absolutely no idea why, like, a Juggernaut was not behaving as intended or something. And I was not able to debug that behavior until I found that out. Juggernauts in particular are very, very notoriously finicky about, whether they'll move or not, because it turns out they need lines that are at least 2 world units long to be able to move through. But an interesting side effect of that is that you can, if you have a monster that is much larger than the other monsters that you use in that particular part of the map, you can restrict where that monster moves by making lines that are too short for them to cross through. So that's a neat little trick that you can use to, say, restrict the movement of Hulks or Juggernauts or whatever, if you want want certain monsters to be able to cross, but not those particular monsters. You may have also noticed a moment ago with a particular terminal that I went through, a weird quirk of some settings that we've applied to this version of Eternal. Most of the time in marathon scenarios, games use the behavior of Marathon 2, where monsters can attack you while you are at a terminal and your oxygen will drain. Basically, the game will proceed as normal. We have set a flag that is introduced in LF1 called Terminal Stop Time, which when you're using a single player, when you're playing it in single player mode, imitates Marathon 1's behavior, where monsters do not move, you do not lose oxygen, the game does not progress at all. I just feel like that's a really nice quality of life function, because it just really sucks if you're reading a terminal and you just get a sneak attack. Like, it's not super realistic, but it's polite. But there are a couple of weird side effects for that in a speedrun. The natural inclination is to try to read terminals as quickly as possible, which you usually do by pressing the action key and page down or down as quickly as possible. The thing is that if you press the action key too many times, however, you will go back into the terminal, which means that the game will stop progressing. So you may have noticed where I tabbed back into the terminal after I was supposed to teleport. So that was fun. This level, Heart of Fusion, is also a gold split in this run, and it's because I have started to implement a rather risky but ultimately much more efficient grenade jump. And there probably are more efficient ways to do it even than I have done it in this run. I'm still experimenting with it. I thought it was too volatile for Total Carnage, and I will... and you'll probably see why in a moment, but it has to do with the fact that this level has respawning compilers. And for those of you familiar with this game, compilers have homing projectiles that do about a third of a bar of health with damage. So they're... Yeah, I could, but then I would still be hitting the action key. Like, I just have to not use the action key to progress through terminals. Like, it's because I hit the action key and open the terminal again. It seems to... it's because I have the overlay map function on, which some people absolutely hate for some reason. I like it for some reason. Yeah, but it opens... Doesn't? Yeah, it does. I'm sure it does. Does it not? Am I seriously? I feel like it does. Is it just tab that advances? That's interesting. Well, I've basically been using the old Bungie defaults for, like... So it's tab rather than action that advances terminal pages. That's fascinating. I don't think I ever noticed that before. Okay, well... The thing is, I am so used to tab being action that, like, it would take time to get used to something else. So I suppose there's an argument for doing that anyway, because I also have alt as my secondary fire, and so, yeah, there's the marathon defense trends. So if you have alt and tab, then, like, you can't actually, like, if you're holding down a... That's interesting. Okay, I guess I never noticed that before. Well, I will give consideration to changing my action key then. I just don't know what I would use. Like shift or something, maybe. Yeah, I guess shift wouldn't be a bad action key, actually. But I'd have to, you know, I'd be fighting 25 years of muscle memory there. This is another case where we just made a tiny change to a map that was just kind of polite. Before we swapped the position of that switch and the pattern buffer beyond it, because the switch is something you have to hit every time. You don't need to hit the pattern buffer every time. Like, you can use it if you want to, but you don't have to. So, I figured that was just something that, like, it made more logical sense for this thing that the player always had to use to be the first in the progression. And we are almost done with Chapter 1. I should mention that not only were a lot of these levels gold splits, but every single chapter in this run is the fastest I have completed that entire chapter. So, like, this is... I had never completed Chapter 1 more quickly, and I completed it in this run, and so on. One other change in 1.3 is that each of these dream levels is based on the penultimate level where giants have fallen, which is as it has been in basically every previous version of the game. But the starting texture set is different now than it was, than it will be in Where Giants Have Fallen. And the idea eventually is going to be that the level is going to remap its texture set while you travel through it. I'm replaying. This is a replay of something I played earlier today. But every single, because I have done a whole bunch of attempts of this, and very few of them end up successful. So I figure people don't want to see numerous, you know, failed attempts in this game. So I haven't really broadcast most of them. But when I have a successful run, I could. Oh yeah, There's not much I can do about that. Sorry. I guess I can try to get closer to the mic. I don't know how the. I didn't really check too much how the audio levels are. Is this clearer now? I don't know. It probably matters. You'll probably need to wait until it's until there's actually something going on. Can you hear me better now? I don't know. Okay, yeah, all right. I'll just have to. Yeah, sorry about that. If there was anything that I said that was unclear that you need me to repeat, yeah. I didn't think about that. I really should have tested the audio levels a bit more before I ran this, but I just wasn't thinking about that at all. I know, right? Who would have thought? Anyhow, as I was saying, like every time, or every single chapter in this run is the fastest I've completed that chapter as a whole, at least amongst the times that I saved. So, like, this just turned out really well. Now, to be clear, there are definitely potential time saves still. Like, it will take a good run to beat this. Now, I do want people to actually be able to understand what I say. I just, you know. So I'm sure there was stuff that I said earlier that got garbled, and I'm sorry about that. Anyhow, this level, Hysterical Womb, used to be Extermination. 1.2.1 changed it so that it is now only requires you to destroy 3 controller cyborgs. Like, Extermination didn't really make a ton of sense for this level because you're meant to be basically freeing the cyborgs and the Spht from captivity, or, you know, from the, you know, Pfhor's control. And so having an Extermination level where the non-controller cyborgs and the Spht were among the things that you were supposed to exterminate makes basically no sense. So there is a required mission where you have to destroy the 3 controller cyborgs. And there's an optional mission which I do not complete because this is a speedrun, where if you just kill all the enforcers, then the cyborgs and the non-controller cyborgs, it's confusing, I know, and the Spht will rebel against the Pfhor. You know, since this is a speedrun, we don't have time to go kill all the enforcers. We just gotta go fast. One thing I probably have not mentioned is that I have redone a lot of the sounds again for this game. Originally, for 1.2.1, I remastered them using a bunch of different things to, you know, fix noise on 8-bit sounds and to mitigate digital clipping and try to create approximations of basically missing upper frequencies that are not present on the original sounds due to low sample rates. But in between 1.2.1 and now, I found the sources for a lot of these sounds. Like the original CD quality stereo 44.1 kilohertz sample rate 16-bit sounds that Bungie made the sound effects for Marathon from. They are created by a Canadian company called Sound Ideas. They are from their Series 6000 General Collection. They are royalty-free sounds that, you know, you can license. I think it's normally $1,000 for the whole Series 6000, which is pretty ridiculously expensive. I think they were recently on sale for $500. Yeah, they are. They're ridiculously expensive. Fortunately, I have a family member that works in the video editing, so I have some hookups, basically. But anyhow, because of that, like, Bungie licensed these sounds, and they show up. You will notice some of these sounds appear in media all over the place, and it's not that those companies have... Yeah, having a hookup from a family member is quite nice in that regard. But anyway, because of that, for the sounds that I was able to locate the sources of, I remixed them again. I would consider the first version a remaster, and then this is a remix because I got the, like, I basically redid from scratch all of the processing that Bungie did to make their sounds, apart from, you know, making them mono and from reducing the sample rates, and in some cases reducing the bit rates. So you will notice that a lot of these sounds are now in stereo, and they are basically higher quality than they ever were before. And that's because, like, in the previous version of the game, all of the sounds had post-processing done that were basically attempting to undo, you know, the loss in quality that you got in the games. That, you know, Bungie made necessary sacrifices in sound quality and so on because hard drives and computer RAM were pretty limited in... Yeah. Well, in this case, it's original stereo, but yes, exactly. So, but in this case, like, it's not post-processing, it's more like I'm just attempting to recreate the original volume, well, minus 6 decibels, because I reduced everything by 6 decibels so that there would be, you know, more headroom to undo digital clipping and so on. But anyway, this is, like, a lot closer to the uncompressed original samples, and so, like, you get a lot less quality stripped out, basically. And of course the stereo adds a lot, especially to the ambient sounds. You get... And there's random sounds like that. There's thunder hits and so on. They just sound much, much nicer in stereo. Now, granted, this is, like, I found about sources for about 100 sounds, I think, but there are a lot of sounds that I have still not found sources for. My suspicion is that they probably used some of Sound Idea's other collections as well. I have not had time to go through all of them. But, maybe at some point I will be able to. I would like to be able to do that before the final release of 1.3, but we'll see. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I think the Lucasfilm collection might actually be a thing that Sound Ideas co-released as well, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe I'm thinking of the BBC collection. I know Doom used some of the BBC sounds as well, which I'm pretty sure Sound Ideas co-released. But yeah, I know that Doom also used a lot of the Series 4000, I think, and maybe the Series 2000. But I know they also used a lot of the Series 6000. Like, everybody used a lot of the Series 6000. That loon sound that you hear in Marathon, you hear that all over the place. A lot of these platform sounds, you hear those all over the place. There are just, like, if you start listening to sound effects, you will notice Marathon sounds everywhere. And you'll notice Doom sounds everywhere, too. There's actually a page on TV Tropes called Doom Doors, because the door sounds in Doom are so ubiquitous in media that you just hear them everywhere. And that really goes for the Marathon platform sounds as well. In fact, I think they mentioned Marathon as the Mac corollary to the Doom in that regard. But and like I said, it is not just the doors, but the doors really do stand out. They show up everywhere. One thing about this level, A Friend in Need, I am using a probably better strategy here, but I think a better one is still possible. It might actually be possible to skip that chip entirely, which would save time on a future level. Like, I should say skip inserting the chip, like, which would give you a chip for a future level. And the same goes for the previous level, Hysterical Womb. The chip that I inserted at the start of the level, I could probably just clip through that platform and then clip back out when I'm done with the level. I have not practiced that clip yet, so that's why I didn't run it. Didn't do it on this run, but I think that's a potential time save for the future. And then for this level, I think the level probably only checks if you have activated, or I should say deactivated the force fields above these 4 big teleporters. I don't think it checks whether you've inserted the chip, so I could just grenade jump up to where those platforms are. You know, the raised spaces, and avoid having to insert the chip at all, and that would probably save a fair amount of time on future levels. This is one level that I don't really attempt to complete as efficiently as possible, and the reason for that will become evident in a moment. But at the moment, I'm just clipping up to the top here. There is a consistent setup that I use here, which, because I'm playing on keyboard, is very, very consistent. It would not be as consistent on mouse. If you press the F10 key, it will display an overlay that shows you a bunch of statistics about your position and angle and in the game world. It'll tell you what polygon you're on, what angle you're looking at, both vertically and horizontally, and what your X, Y, and Z positions are. In this case, the view angle, the horizontal view angle, is the important one. I always go to 144.1 degrees, I think. And that basically ensures that if I am firing the exact same number of grenades and bullets, assault rifle bullets, that I will always have the exact... basically, that clip always works. It's, I think, 7 or 8 grenades after the second time I reload. And that will always clip me up. Which is important because that basically enables me to skip like 95% of the level. And there are other ways to get up there, but I have not found one that is as consistent and as risk-free. And those are both important factors when you're playing Untitled Carnage. But anyway, the reason I don't really care about getting this as efficiently as possible is because the other big task that I need to accomplish in this level is ammo collection. A large part of speedrunning this game is ammo management. And as you've probably noticed, the fusion cannon is a god-tier weapon in this game for basically the entire first 4 chapters. So I want to leave this level with around 130 fusion batteries. And as you'll notice, the Vec Bobs are ubiquitous on this level, and when they die, they drop fusion ammo. So basically, I just need to kill a bit of time and some juggernauts, and then go collect fusion batteries. Now, this did not go super well in this run. Like, I think it took like a minute longer than it really needed to. But I just got some bad enemy patterns here. But anyway, I did leave the level with about 138 fusion batteries, I think. Which is... yeah, no problem. Glad you've enjoyed it. And yeah, one thing I didn't mention is that I redid this storm sound as well for this level, which I'm really happy with how it turned out. This whole level, or this whole planet, is kind of like meant to be sort of tropical in a way. Like it's the Pfhor colony version of tropical. Anyway, have a good night. But because of that, like, you will notice that every level has some... Yeah, no problem. And, like, this is actually kind of partially derived from that, from the same wind sound that Marathon uses, but it's a longer version of the same sample, and it has some lightning and rain effects that I added on top of it to make it sound even rainier. So I would not be surprised if Dark Forces and Marathon used the same basic track as the source for their wind sounds. You gotta be careful of those Juggernauts, they will reduce your health pretty quickly. Anyway, I think I don't remember, I went around for a little bit longer until I got about 130 fusion batteries, and then I went through to the end. Yeah, that's about right. Like I said, this could have gone a little faster, but so much of the rest of the run was like, went so well that, you know, I don't really have any complaints. So this part of the level, like, I'm just about to go to the end, and there is this kind of tricky fight at the end. You will notice that I activated this platform that takes you to the final segment in advance, like before I went through and collected the ammo. And I'm pretty sure I fired at some point, and the reason is I wanted to wake these dudes up so that they would be clustered in the center. For some reason, if you fire, they will move from their original positions, and they almost always end up in the center of the level. In fact, I've never seen them not do that. And obviously that's a much more advantageous position because I can then just strafe around them. Which is a lot nicer than having some of them cluster at the edges and having to take fire from both sides and not really being able to dodge effectively. And again, because terminal stop time is enabled, I'm just able to ignore those Mothers of All Hunters at the end, which saves quite a bit of time. That wasn't the reason that I enabled terminal stop time, but it is a rather fun side effect of it. And so this grenade jump enables me to skip about a third of the level, which is nice. One thing that would be even nicer in potential runs, or in future runs, is if I can come in here with two chips. Then I would be able to skip some of the... Oh, yeah. I mean, there's definitely stuff I could do to, I don't know. Yeah, there's definitely stuff I could do to redesign the encounter somewhat. I don't know, like, because the thing is, like, having to take damage from Enforcers and Mothers of All Hunters and so on would be pretty rude for that point in the game. But you know, there is some way that I could probably make it less cheesable without making it feel unfair for that point. I think the other thing I could do is just put the Enforcers in the center, and then have other monsters that are deaf at the edges. Because the annoying thing about having the Enforcers at the edges is that they don't move. So, like, you would have to basically fire at them first while you were also taking Mother of All Hunters damage. And that would be... like, especially since we redid the physics. Like, it was already rude in the 1.2 physics, but it would be, like, borderline impossible, I think, in 1.3. I don't know, maybe it would be easier than I think. I'd have to try it. It seems like some sort of Hell Pack sort of thing. Maybe I'll do it for a Hell Pack level for 2.0. For Hell Pack 2. Anyway, if I were able to enter this level... Well, I mean, have you seen how much damage those Mothers of All Hunters do? They like... It's like half a bar in... Or it's like a bar in half a second or something. If that. Like... And the Enforcers aren't exactly slouchers themselves, and there's troopers in there, and hunters, and I don't know. But yeah, this part of the game has a ton of 3x. That's true. And despite that, I still took enough damage to need to go retrait. Well, like I said, I think that would be a good Hell Pack level. I'll probably do it for Hell Pack too. I think it might be a little excessive for this stage in the game, but I will consider changing the encounter in some way. I do think like it's kind of an esoteric strategy for now, and I can see an argument for wanting a different one. Anyway, if I were able to enter this level with the extra chips, then I would not need to do as much backtracking. So that is definitely a thing that I want to consider for a future run. But this level is a lot of fun. It's probably one of the best in Chapter 2, honestly. It's just a lot of really good combat, and one kind of cool thing about this chapter in particular is that we kind of try to take advantage of some power-ups that are barely used in the vanilla games. So you get like a couple of levels of invincibility, which I don't think they ever used those in solo. Or if they did, it was like once. I know there's one in... there's one in not God Will Sort the Dead, Where the Twist Flops. And then I think there's another one in there is another one, God Will Sort the Dead, but I don't think you can get it in solo. I think it's only gettable in multiplayer. I always get those two levels confused. I was grenade jumping in the wrong direction there. Anyway, because I had to go pick up those I have to go pick up these two chips, and then I have to go put them back at that terminal earlier in the level. If I could pick up the chip, or if I could put them in the terminal, or, put chips from previous levels in the terminal, and then go pick up new chips, that would save probably half a minute, maybe a minute. It would be a big time save, so... As you see now, I've got to go backtrack, and then I'll have to backtrack again. It's obviously, when speedrunning, you want to avoid things like that. One thing I haven't really spoken about yet is doors. You might notice that basically, well, a lot of the doors in this game are just completely lit up. And then some of them have either flashing or flickering or strobe lights. And then some of them are dark. And there is a pattern behind that, which is not fully implemented throughout the entire game yet, but eventually will be. That is one of the changes left for 1.3 Final. The idea is that if a door is completely lit up, then the player will always be able to open it just using the action key. If it is flickering or flashing, strobe lights fading in and out, if it has a variable light, in other words, then it can be opened, but it requires something like a switch or walking over a particular part of the level or a monster to open it. Something other than the player's action key will open it. And then the final case is if the door is completely dark, or mostly dark, and does not have any flickering lights. And basically in those cases, in almost all cases, the door will just never open. So I feel like that's a really helpful shorthand. It makes it easier to navigate levels. The thing about it is that you have to use it consistently. Like, if you try to subvert it for a particular secret or something, then players will just cease to trust it. So it has to be something you do consistently, and obviously, that implementing that throughout an entire game takes a lot of work. I'm not done with it yet, so it's, like, partially implemented. But that is the final plan for 1.3. And switches have a similar setup where if they are lit, then you'll be able to activate them. If they are not lit, then they probably will, like, you need to do something else before you can activate them. So we are most of the way through Chapter 2 now. This is the second to last level. Well, second to last real level. There's also the dream level. I think this level was also a gold split. I think I just played better for the most part. And I also, like, I have done some stuff that basically makes levels like this a little bit faster in terms of the design. One thing about old versions of Eternal, and a lot of people complained about this, and I think it was kind of justified, is that there were just too many switches. Like, a lot of these were done just to make sure that players would visit certain parts of the level. And that's understandable to some extent. I get why designers want people to see their stuff. But, like, I think it was taken too far. So in some cases, like here, this particular switch now activates doors in, like, 4 different parts of the level. Whereas before, I think it only activated 1 door, and then you had to go travel up that platform that I just passed off to the right. And there were a few other places that you would hit flat switches. Like, this recharger here was a switch, and that the oxygen recharger was a switch, and the pattern buffer was a switch. There were just switches everywhere. And I didn't feel like that was really necessary, so I've changed some of them to other things, which also reduces the amount of backtracking to some extent. In fact, I probably didn't really need that recharge, but it was right there. And then, you know, there's also stuff like just, you know, grenade jumping where it's advantageous to do so. I also probably could have just ignored these dudes, but, you know. I haven't actually tested that. I don't know if that would have worked well or not. I am not always great with my aim. So this chip was the mission, basically. Now, it might actually be possible to skip that chip. I don't know. The chip definitely opens up the end of the level, but I don't remember if it's set as a mission type or not. And there would be, like, ideally, like, if I could find a way to steal 3 chips, that would probably be the most optimal. But I have not really worked out the logistics for that. Like, I don't know where the most advantageous place to steal the 3rd chip would be. If I could just clip through that door at the end of the level and then just leave, then I would be able to steal a 3rd chip. Because ideally, I want 1 chip that I can steal for the level 3rd rock from Lh'owon, which would save like 4 minutes, probably. At least 2 or 3. And then the other one, where it would be ideal, like the next level right after that, Flight of Icarus. If you could start out with 2 chips on that at the start of that level, that would also save some time. I don't know if it would save... It would not save as much time as 3rd rock from Lh'owon. Like, you would not save like 3 or 4 minutes from that, but you would save some backtracking. So that is a potential time save in the future. And this level was another gold split. I did not play it perfectly. Hitting that defender took up some time, but I didn't have to go back for very many recharges, so that saved a lot of time. And also, I have redesigned the levels so that you have to spend less time waiting around for platforms to you know, basically to retract and so on. I actually take a somewhat roundabout route on this level, but I think that it probably would not be... Like, I think the more direct route would probably actually take more time, because the roundabout route saves several... Like, you don't have to deal with... I think it cuts out like 2 or 3 Mothers of All Hunters. It cuts out some flame cyborgs. Well, I guess they're scatter rifle cyborgs in this level. In this game, I guess they'd be called, because there's no flamethrower. Like, it cuts out a lot of very dangerous enemies, and I feel like you would be making so many trips back to the recharger if you were to deal with the to take the quote-unquote more direct route. I have not actually timed it though, so it's possible that the more direct route would in fact be more direct. This is definitely more consistent though. One thing, like, if you're doing the skipping the Mother of All Hunters route, then this door, the larger door in this room, do not travel through that door, because that will activate the Mothers of All Hunters and the cyborgs and some compilers and just a whole bunch of enemies that are hostile to you on this level. One other thing is that it's not really necessary to have full 3x shields, although you can get full 3x shields at the end of this level. I would suggest having at least 1x shields, because you can just run across random troopers that you don't expect who can take away quite a bit of your health. In fact, I am just about to encounter one here that I do not expect to see. That does take away some of my health, but at the start of the 3rd chapter, you are basically given full 3x shields just as a sort of courtesy, because you start that level by taking a dip in lava, unless you do a particular unless you fire the assault rifle, basically. And I just thought it would have been rude to basically automatically kill the player if they had shields below a certain point, so... I think previous versions of Eternal may have just started the player on top of a 2x charger, like can or something, I don't remember. Anyway, that was chapter 2. This is chapter 3. And for whatever reason, it plays that sound effect at the very start of the level. But one thing you may notice pretty quickly about Lh'owon, it's quite a bit greener than you see it in Marathon and Marathon 2/Infinity. That's because the level, or the games mention at some point that Lh'owon used to be a paradise before the Pfhor, you know, carpet bombed the planet basically into oblivion and turned it into a desert wasteland. And old versions of Eternal did not really reflect that. In fact, I don't think there was any green at all in the Lh'owon texture set prior to 1.3. So that is something that we have definitely redesigned. Like, the 1.3 redesign centers the entire texture set around green, basically. There are other colors in it, but they somehow relate to green for the most part. And I do have to say I really like the new color set. These platforms are faster in this than they were in previous versions of Eternal and in the Marathon 2 counterpart of this level. My idea behind it was basically just that the machinery in Marathon 2 is antique, so it's not working as quickly as it would be in its prime. This is basically the mission objective. You just have to read that terminal. And I stopped there for a second because I was afraid my computer at the time was going to lag. so I just didn't want to take a dip into the lava. Because I want to start the next level with as much health as possible, because I am attempting a clip, which I did pull off. Like, there is a clip that I have not done that much yet, and I wanted to be sure I had as much health as possible in case something went wrong. It did, in fact, go pretty well, but I was nervous about it because I really had not practiced it before yesterday. And I think there's probably a way to clip up into the tower, which would skip like a minute and a half of wandering around, but I have not really practiced it yet. Like, on this level, I mean. This was an unfortunate time loss for a second. The Sphet just didn't want to move, so I had to keep firing, and I ended up having to kill one, which I never feel good about, but, you know, it's a speedrun, dude. Get out of the way. But yeah, I mean, this is, you know, it is the hard stuff rules again, but I think it's kind of a cool nostalgia bit. And then there's also Eat It Vidboy, obviously. And then the next level is basically 6,000 feet under again. But you're not going to see all that much of it, because I am going to clip through it. One thing did kind of startle me at the start of this level. Normally I don't see two Flickta there, so that was kind of unexpected. And I do kind of take my time at the start here, because there are a lot of hostile Sphet here that can really ruin your day, and it's hard to know where they're going to be. So I did kind of want to, like, I wanted to be sure that that they weren't going to bother me while I was attempting this clip here. I'm sure as I attempt it more, I will be more used to where they start, and I'll have better knowledge of where they tend to end up. But in this case, I did not really know that. So I spent a little bit more time, I think, than was probably optimal here, just waiting to see if anyone else was going to show up. And after a little bit longer, I conclude that it's safe. I spoke earlier about this setup for Unlucky for Some being like pressing F10 and seeing what the angle was and making it 144.1 degrees. In this case, I use a similar consistent setup. And I have, this might not be the most optimal setup possible, but I am pretty sure it was 35 degrees. I can tell you exactly, yeah, it's 35.156 degrees. And that will pretty consistently launch you back here, which is not 100% optimal, but it gets you through there very quickly. And you always basically end up in the same exact spot. And you are not too close to that hostile Sphet that was firing at me. I took out the second one because he will become hostile if I hit him. But otherwise, like, it's probably not strictly necessary, but it's just a backup strat. And again, I don't feel great about it, but it's a speedrun. Gotta go fast. In this case, I'm now going to clip through this door. It is the exact same angle, in fact, it's also 35 degrees. This will launch you back pretty far. And this aspect is not 100% consistent, it really depends on what the Flickta decide to do. In that case, the Flickta just kind of got in the way. But I still just clipped back into here. The other thing that kind of slows down this level a bit is this staircase, which has basically gotten successively more long in each version of the game. And part of this is because basically we've determined that the player should be traveling really far up to get to the next level. This level is, you might have noticed, is 6,000 feet under again. And the next level has a cameo of Bob's Big Date. It is meant to be at the same height of the planet as Bob's Big Date. So because of that, like, you should be traveling up quite a far distance. And so because of that, you know, it is a long staircase. There are ways to clip up into it. I did not really bother with any of them because I don't have a consistent setup that doesn't cause me to take a lot of damage. But that is something I'm going to look into. This level is She's the Dark One. We've got 2 chips that we've got to pick up. And then we've got to insert them. I don't know how much time could be saved by skipping these chips. I don't think nearly as much as, like on Total Carnage, at least there's not nearly as much time to be saved as there would be on other levels. So I like, it could possibly be, you could possibly save some time by collecting stuff out of order, but I'm not even sure about that. This route is already kind of optimal, I think, for Total Carnage. Now on Kindergarten, that's another story entirely. I'm sure you could save quite a bit more time. It's just with respect to the other levels in the route. And part of the reason is that the next level, Third Rock from Lh'owon, or not next level, it's the level after next, but it's the next real level in this run. As I will explain in a moment. But anyway, Third Rock from Lh'owon is very, very combat intensive on Total Carnage, but combat is not really a factor nearly as much on Kindergarten, so I think there's a lot more time to be saved on Total Carnage for Third Rock from Lh'owon. That probably is not really so consequential on Kindergarten. Anyway, we've already got the 2 uplink chips. We're just going to go insert them, and then we'll be teleported out. And this is also about the halfway point of the run, at least in terms of levels. The back half of the run I don't have optimized quite as well. This level, as it happens, is in fact the exact midway point of the game, at least in terms of levels, I think. It is the midway point of Chapter 3. But we're barely going to see it, as you will notice. I'm still very pleased with TBCR and I discovered this strategy, and I'm still very, very happy with it. One other thing is that this level is now a nighttime level. It was daytime in previous versions of the game. Anyway, that's Fit Happens. That's as much as you're going to just see of it. This is Third Rock from Lh'owon. This level has also had its texture set changed for 1.3. The first and last level, the Prologue and Epilogue levels, Far Side of Nowhere and Near Side of Everywhere, have also had their texture sets changed to this. They are now this fit texture set to match the architecture of Lh'owon better. Whereas before they used the Yarrow set. And I think this fit set is probably a better fit. Fit. Yeah, okay, sorry. So, as I said, this is probably the most combat-intensive level in this game. Or not in this game, in this chapter. So I think if I could skip the chip that you have to pick up, that would probably save a lot of time. So that is definitely a thing that future runs will incorporate. Because if you could skip the chip, then you could basically there's a grenade jump that you could do near the, that would take you to near the end of the level, and you could just skip this entire bit. Which is like 2/3 of the mission. So I'm guessing that would probably amount to about 4 or 5 minutes. It would not be perfectly safe, but this level isn't perfectly safe anyway, so One safety I take is here. It's a sort of safety, I suppose. I activate these monsters, clear out this room, and then there's the 3x recharger in there. It is handy to have a charger at this point of the level. It probably takes a bit of extra time, but I should note, like, you're seeing me play through this deathless, but this is like, I'm sure that I've made at least 100 attempts in between this and my previous deathless run that did not make it to the end because I died. And I could probably keep playing, and I could probably still PB in some of those attempts. But number one, I don't really do that very often because, like, unless I'm already broadcasting, it doesn't really make sense. And there's a lot of attempts that I just completely abandon because I'm not happy with how they're going. And I don't think that would make for very compelling viewing for what is admittedly not a very widely watched speed game, because it is a third-party mod for something that is already not a very widely watched speed game. So, like, there's a limited audience for that, and it is effort to you know, bother broadcasting and to try to think of things to say while broadcasting and reading chat. And I don't know if it's really worth the effort. Like, the reward to effort ratio seems quite low. Like, I mean, if there were interest in it, I probably, like, if enough people expressed interest in it, I would consider doing it more often. But I figure that for the most part, people probably only really want to see completed runs of the game. And, you know, you don't really get onto PB pace that often. Certainly you don't get runs this insane that often. So anyway, that's the chip. As you can see, it is quite a lot of work to go get to it. Now, the thing about the chip is that it does, it is next to a platform switch that enables the progression up to the next part of the level, but I'm pretty sure you can just grenade jump up there. And I did go a bit out of my way to pick up some ammo that I almost certainly did not actually need. So that is also a potential time save for a future run. I had not really taken a tally of how much pellet pack ammo I used, but as it turns out, I have like 80 or something free, like 80 or something unused pellet pack ammo at the end of the game for the scatter rifle. So, and at this point I have like 30 free ones, so I can probably just stop really caring too much about you know, picking up pellet pack ammo by this point. The end of this level didn't go super great, as I recall, but it wound up not mattering that much. I got sniped by quite a bit of friendly fire here, but also you were probably occasionally seeing a weird engine bug with with weapons that are marked as dual function, I think. It might also be applicable to multi-purpose. But weapons that share the same ammo for both of their triggers are subject to this really annoying bug, where if you're firing both triggers at the same time, then the game will switch you off of that weapon when it reloads. I don't know why it does this. I have reported it as a bug. It has not been fixed yet. It is pretty annoying, and it is something that I am, like, because of that, I am considering redoing how certain weapons work in 1.3 final. Notably the wave motion cannon, which has already been, like, I already overhauled it somewhat for 1.3, as you will see in the next chapter, but I'm not perfectly happy with how it's working right now because of that annoying engine bug. But my hope is that by the time we're actually done with 1.3 in, like, 2037... That was a joke, by the way. But my hope is that by the time we're actually done with 1.3, there will be a new version of the engine that fixes that bug, and so I won't even have to worry about it. But we'll see how it works out. In any case, I don't really want to change the physics at this point because Ares 540, who helped me with that clip on Let Sleeping Gods Die, and is helping with a few other level strategies as well, is going to probably be submitting this to the Shots Fired speedrun marathon. And, like, because he's been practicing with those particular physics, I'm just going to leave them. I am kind of on a deadline where, for the 1.3 preview, where I just, like... yeah, it's in 1.2.1. It is, unlucky for some. Yeah. You can, I mean, the physics aren't going to be exactly the same. The staff is quite a bit more powerful in this version, and that's another thing that the 1.3 final, like, it probably won't be as powerful. At least the projectile won't be as powerful. I think I'll probably leave the primary trigger intact. But yeah, 1.2.1 should have basically the same layout. Like, if you can figure out a good, consistent strat for, you know, beating it without the cheese strat, then by all means, let's see it. Like, there probably is something that can be done to, you know, tank some of the damage, but, the thing about 1.2.1 is that the Mother of All Hunters are basically completely trivial in 1.2.1, and in 1.3, they are not. They are very, very lethal. So, but you also have, you're in the WMade Discords, so you can just download 1.3 as it currently sits. It's in the, if you just go to the channel description for the Eternal Discussion section, it should be, in the description, so you can... Yeah, it doesn't have the Phoenix Mother of All Hunters, so it's the Phoenix style. I mean, I don't think I took the physics... Yeah, so, like, it's nowhere near as dangerous in 1.2.1. Like, you can still... Like, I think it would be probably possible to just tank all of that damage in 1.2.1. I don't know if it would be doable in 1.3. And that's like part of the reason that I, you know, have been consistently using that strategy. I was still using it in 1.2, but, like, I don't think it was essential in 1.2. I think it might actually be essential in 1.3. But I would also be willing to give some thought to redesigning that in a way that makes it less necessary to cheese it. And also makes it more cheese resistant. But at the same time, there's also the fact that, you know, the terminal itself can, you know, you can just ignore the Mother of All Hunters, basically, once you've cleared out the other enemies. By this point, I was kind of playing a bit more cautiously, I guess, than I might have if my time hadn't been this good. This is, by the way, the final level of Chapter 3. As you can probably tell, it's based on my own private Thermopylae from Marathon 2. Also, one other thing that I didn't really mention is that we added some of these Yeah, I mean, there's just there's a bunch of different possibilities for that fight, and I am open to discussion about, you know, what the best way to handle it would be. And I'm not really firmly decided one way or the other. But one thing you'll notice is that there's ambient wildlife creatures in Infinity that you would see wandering around Lh'owon are in Eternal now. They were not in previous versions of the game. I thought it was kind of conspicuous that they weren't there. So they're there now. But yeah, like that's the one thing about I have given some consideration to in Eternal's combat design is that in some cases there are ways where you can just make things optionally harder for yourself if you want to. Like if you want to give yourself a challenge, you can. Like there's often an easy way and a hard way to do a fight, and the hard way will often look cooler, but it's obviously harder. So, and it will probably be more time consuming in many cases too. But like the point is, like if you want to go for the really cool looking, you know, stylish skill cap way to do a fight, then you can. And I do kind of like making some of the hardest challenges in the game, but hardest challenges in the game optional. Like in fact, I even suggest in the README to 1.3 that there are certain things that you can do to make the game harder if you think Total Carnage is still kind of easy. This level is called Pfhor lamm or something. I am sure I mangled that pronunciation. It is based on a Swedish tongue twister, probably also Danish and Scandinavian, or Danish and Norwegian rather. Well, both of which are Scandinavian, which means basically it translates as "Father, do sheep beget sheeps? No, sheep beget lambs." And the joke is that Pfhor and Pfhor, well, Pfhor and the word that means both sheep and beget is pronounced the same as Pfhor. So I guess it's Pfhor lamm is the correct pronunciation. Anyway, this level used to be in the Pfhor texture set, but we changed it to the Yarrow texture set for a number of reasons in 1.3. And I think it kind of looks better that way. But more importantly, there was a rather glaring aspect of the texture set choices in previous versions of the game. Each chapter is meant to have a dominant texture set, and that was true for 4 out of the 5 chapters in the game, but it was not true for Chapter 4, because it had 4 levels that were using the Pfhor texture set and 4 levels that were using the Yarrow texture set. And the Yarrow texture set was meant to be the dominant level, or dominant texture set of this chapter, but it was not. So, this was the level that it made the most sense to change to the Yarrow texture set. Because the other 3 levels are meant to be the same physical location. So, and we didn't want to change every single level in the chapter to the Yarrow texture set. That would have been boring. So, as a result, this level now uses the Yarrow texture set. I knocked this Enforcer far back. A lot further than I thought it was going to. So I just said, I don't need that ammo that badly. This is a secret that can speed up the level quite a bit. Before the secret in that room was just that the room existed, because you would have to go underneath some damaging Pfhor slime to even get to that room. But in in the Yarrow set, the liquid of, the Yarrow goo does not damage you. So players would already think to look in that room. At least it would be more obvious to look in that room. So because of that, we had to introduce another way for the player to get into that room. Like, we had to introduce something else in that room that would be a secret. And so the secret is getting into that teleporter. And there are actually a couple different ways to get into that teleporter. One of them doesn't even require a grenade jump, but the grenade jump method is faster. And that being a teleporter also means that you can now use the invincibility a bit more efficiently. Because obviously the most efficient use of it is in that room. Anyway, we are basically almost done with this level. The next level is called the Incredible Hulk. It is I think it is the longest level in this speedrun at the moment. I think there are probably... Well, Aries540 said he has discovered a few ways to clip that would save some time in that level, but I don't really understand how the clips work yet, so I did not even attempt to implement them in this run. I don't even really know where they are. But that level, I think, has the most potential for time saves out of this entire run. So, yeah, here we are. I don't know if I mentioned this yet because I was talking for about 15 minutes before realizing that my mic was muted. But one thing that is new to 1.3 is that there are a lot of new music tracks. The hopeful goal is that each level that has some form of combat in it will have a unique music track. We are not quite to that stage yet, but we have had 3 new people that have composed, well, arranged tracks for this. And so we have, like, I want to say the original game, or well, 1.2 and 1.2.1 both had 25 music tracks, I think, and we are now at like 40 or something. So there's a lot less repetition. I think there are only 3 tracks that are used in more than one level that features combat. Which is really, really great. We're almost to the point where we don't need to repeat any tracks at all. The thing about this level that is really time-consuming, I think, is that there are... Like, number one, the Hulks just take a ton of time to deal with. And number two, it's just a really convoluted route. This is one of those levels that used to have a ton of switches, and it still has quite a lot of them. It doesn't have as many as it used to, but... Like, there's a lot of places that we just changed to tag switches or something, because... Like, you would just have to hit like 4 or 5 switches in the same room, and that was ridiculous. It's like, why? Shoutouts to Tacticus again. Like I mentioned, that he redid all of the weaponry for 1.3. I think the fist is the only thing that is basically the same from previous releases, but it already looked pretty much perfect, so who cares? But he also redid a lot of the landscapes. This one is, I think, the most recent one that he submitted. It looks really spectacular. It's only really used in 3 levels, of which one of them really doesn't count as a level. But it just looks really good. I almost got a lot... Like, that was almost a big... That was almost a lot of trouble, but, yeah. Luckily, the staff in this does quite a high DPS. The thing about the Hulks is they're only really dangerous if they get close to you. But because of that, like, because they take so much, because they're so beefy in terms of, you know, their health. They can make levels very volatile. They're not a threat unless they get close to you, but if they do get close to you, then, you know, they can end the run, because you might not actually be able to kill them in time for them to, in time to, you know, save yourself. That said, they're really only a danger in groups. And this is the penultimate level where they will actually really be a threat. Babylon 10, which is the next level, is the last level that they're hostile to us in this chapter. And I think they make only, like, very occasional appearances after that. But they're basically everywhere in this level and in the next one. On the other hand, you can basically ignore them in 4-4 lamm. I don't really understand what I got caught on there. Or there. I don't think I've ever had that happen before. I am kind of planning to redesign parts of this. So I'll have to take a look at that. That was really weird. So one thing we changed about the design of this level is that, like before, the wave motion cannon was just sitting out in the open. And we decided that doesn't really make sense. Like, someone would have picked it up. So we've moved it into an area of the level that was not open until you hit a switch. And I think that makes a lot more sense. But that does mean that you get it... I guess it's not really meaningfully earlier. It just means you get it before you go outside, whereas into the final area of the level, but you get it right before you go outside into the final area of the level. Whereas before you just got it when you went outside into the final area of the level. So it's like 10 seconds earlier, I guess. One other change about the geometry that I have implemented through a lot, but not all of 1.3 yet, is we're basically trying to make it so that there is a meaningful difference between Pfhor geometry and Yarrow or human or Spht geometry, where regular geometric shapes appear fairly often in the latter three. And are almost absent from Pfhor geometry. So you will see a lot of, like, for instance, the octagons in this level are now all entirely regular octagons. And that's true throughout a lot of the game. It's not entirely the case throughout every single level yet. But and the reason it is not entirely the case is that it would take some significant redesigns to a couple of levels. Okay, I just noticed something about this particular HUD, where the HUD for the wave motion cannon is not correct. It is correct in the 1920 by 1080 HUD, so I'll have to fix this HUD. So as I probably was going to mention, the wave motion cannon, we changed the physics for it a bit. In previous versions of the game, well, in 1.2, and in probably 1.2. Well, and definitely 1.2.1, and probably in 1.2.0 as well, the wave motion cannon did 9,001 damage, which is a lot. For reference, Juggernauts have Well, minor juggernauts on normal have 2,500 health. Major juggernauts on normal have 5,000 health. Major juggernauts on total carnage have 7,500. So, in other words, the wave motion cannon does way more damage than is actually necessary to kill a juggernaut, especially because the juggernaut is actually weak to wave motion cannon damage, which means that these projectiles are actually doing 18,000 damage to juggernauts. So we decided, no, like that wasn't really an issue, but there is a fight in the third to last level of this game where I don't want to spoil it too much, but basically there is an enemy that also has a wave motion cannon. The way the Yarrow weaponry in this game works means that there is a way to render yourself immune to its damage, but being immune to its damage just means you don't take damage from it. You still get knocked around by it. And the problem with having a projectile that did 9,001 damage was that it just knocked you like halfway across the map. And we decided that was excessive. So what we did instead, the wave motion cannon projectiles now do, I want to say 2,251 damage. And so the primary projectiles that you see me firing right now are you know, those are the 2,251 damage each, and because the Juggernaut is weak to them, it takes 2 of them to kill a Juggernaut. So the secondary trigger will do, it will fire 4 of those projectiles at once, so that means it does 9, together those 4 projectiles will do 9,004 damage. And the idea was that, basically you could use the secondary trigger to approximate the basic, you know, effect of the primary trigger of the wave motion cannon in previous versions of the game, and the primary trigger itself would be kind of a wave motion cannon light, which takes up less, it takes up less of your, you know, less of your 0-point modules are the ammo for wave motion cannon, for the wave motion cannon in this game. And that way you can conserve some of it, and you can only use this, and that way the secondary trigger can be your absolute panic button, basically. The other thing is that the secondary trigger also has a much higher recoil, which is useful for wave motion cannon jumping. But the problem with this particular setup, which I've been slowly getting around to here, is that because it is a dual function weapon, it features the same bug that the staff does, where if you fire the secondary trigger too much, too quickly, and have to reload it, it will switch you off of the wave motion cannon, which is super, super annoying. And it's why I am not 100% sure I'm going to leave the physics the way they are. But I have not really determined that for sure yet, mostly because I don't know for sure if they are going to fix this particular bug by the time there is another engine release. If they do, then I can just leave it as is. But if it persists in version whatever the next LF1 release is, if it's 1.6 or 2.0 or whatever, then I will have to give some consideration to redoing the wave motion cannon physics again. So this level did not go perfect. I took more damage than I wanted, and then I wound up losing some time because I misunderstood or misremembered where a particular trigger is that activates some it basically starts how would I describe it? It starts the goo at the bottom of the level starts rising, or slime, or whatever you want to call it. It makes the slime at the bottom of the level start rising. But for whatever reason, I was not passing over the correct part of the level. And I don't think I really understood where that was. And so I was a little confused as to why it wasn't rising. And I kind of want to redesign that, because I think it's not quite intuitive enough where it is. But the idea is that it gives you a fast path back up from where this 3x recharger is down there, up to the rest of the level. I don't really understand why this was the first time I had trouble with that. It's very odd. I did redo some of the proportions of this part of the level, but I don't think... like, that shouldn't have affected it. So I don't know what happened. But anyway, by this point it did start rising, so that was like a 20 or 30 second time loss. And I'm not really totally sure I even needed this recharge, but this is a volatile level. So I was not totally sure that I would be able to again, by this point I was playing more cautiously. And because this level was volatile, I didn't want to chance a death at this, with a run going this well. For this particular level, you the basic mission objective is you have a whole bunch of switches you need to hit, most of which are kind of arranged in this sort of semicircle, but the way the level is laid out, you do have to activate a whole bunch of monsters basically to get them out of the way. I probably could have just used the wave motion cannon again here and would save some time. Especially, like, since I redid how the ammo works. Like, you get a bit more... I think you get twice as many shots per... Might even be 4 times as many shots per 0-point module now. So I definitely could have been a bit more... free with my wave motion cannon usage. I also didn't remember entirely which switches I had hit. There are a lot of them, so... this level, Dreadnought, is the... I didn't really discuss this, but each level in each chapter in Eternal has a branch point level, where depending upon what you do in the level, you can get taken to either the failure branch or the success branch. The failure branch will just loop you back around to the branch point level again. And then the success branch takes you to the next chapter. Anyway, this level has a bit of architecture that is probably not going to appear in the final version of 1.3. And the reason for this is that it depends on a rather gratuitous trick that will probably break in the upcoming angle renderer. And, like... it was kind of gratuitous to even include it, but it is just in an out-of-the-way part of the level that really doesn't affect anything meaningful. Like, it's just some neat little eye candy that can easily be redesigned in a future version of the game. And I kind of like the idea that the 1.3 preview is going to have one bit of architecture that is completely unique to the 1.3 preview. Basically, it depends on a trick using untextured sides that it's an undefined behavior in the renderer, And because the way the OpenGL renderer handles it is that it will just display anything behind an untextured side. That is not how the software renderer handles it. That probably won't be how the angle renderer handles it, which is what is going to eventually replace OpenGL. I mean, it might be. And if it is, I'd be happy with it, because that would mean we would have to redesign a lot less of where monsters are in dreams than we otherwise will. But, you know, where monsters are in dreams is, you know, who knows when that will ever come out. But because where monsters are in dreams is probably still months out, at least, from being finished. And because we probably won't actually use that trick because it probably is going to break, I did think it would be kind of cool to have a major release of sorts use that trick once, just so people could get to see it while it still works. But like I said, since this is just the preview, it's not the final version of 1.3, I'm fine with having it be something that just works for now and then probably won't work later. Because, like I said, you know, this probably won't be the only 1.3 preview either. I imagine, you know, there's going to be quite a bit more that we do before it's finished. Anyway, you can sort of vaguely see these discs out in this central area that has this weird 5D space. And now they just went dark. But those floating discs are the thing that depends on the rendering trick. And it would just be the space above or below them that would just end up like with the Hall of Mirrors effect if the trick doesn't work. And so that's really easy to redesign, and so it's just a tiny part of a level that's like, it kind of, having the Hall of Mirrors effect wouldn't really even necessarily be that breaking of suspension. Like, it wouldn't break suspension of disbelief that much. It's just some weird Yarrow stuff. It's some weird Yarrow stuff either way, so like, it wouldn't be great, but you know, it's a part of the level the player can't even access, and it's not, you know, it's just, it's just like kind of off to the side. Anyway, this level, once more Under the Breach, is the penultimate level of Chapter 4. You will notice that this level is virtually unique among the 4 texture set levels. Its counterpart, Bug Eyed in Space, is another example, and then the final level of this chapter, Genie in a Bottle, will also, to some extent, carry it through with this. And this is one of the few 4 levels that actually uses regular geometric shapes. Yeah, the assault rifle definitely is really powerful. But again, I think 1.2.1 you can probably trivialize it. I am not sure you'll have as much luck with 1.3. You do have access to the WMade Discord, right? So you can, yeah, the enforcers are bad mother, hush your mouths. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave it for now. I will consider it at some point, like maybe there is some way to do it that, I don't know, because I do like having the oh, you did it 1.3, okay, cool. Yeah, the assault rifle is still super powerful. Okay. I will, did you save a recording of it? I would be interested to see how you did it, although I might practice it myself, just without looking at your recording. But if you did save a recording of it, I would be interested in seeing that. Anyway, going back to this level, the idea with having all of these regular geometric curves and so on is that this is kind of, this
This takes place in a part of the Pfhor history before they had started destroying everything Yarrow they saw on site. So the idea... Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah. Well, when I'm done with this, I would be interested in taking a look at it when... Yeah. Okay, yeah, that would work too. That's right, you can just save the VOD. Alright. I will do that. Yeah, so the idea is that since this is before they started destroying everything Yarrow they saw on site, this is basically just Yarrow technology that they took and put their own coat of paint over, basically. So, like, it is sort of meant to be a subtle indication to the player that, you know, this is different from the other Pfhor architecture you've seen earlier in the game. This level also shares a lot of architecture with another level that you would see in the Failure Branch called Bug-Eyed in Space. This level and Bug-Eyed in Space have both been heavily changed for 1.3. The layout is somewhat different, which with an idea of making the fights a bit more dynamic and like there are more opportunities for counterplay, and you can like approach rooms in several different ways in a way that I don't think was really as feasible in old versions of the game. But the other big change is a story-related change where these used to be extermination missions. That is no longer technically the case, although functionally, owing to Lewis script that I incorporated, you still have to kill a lot of the Pfhor. But you can leave other enemies, notably the drones, alive. Because something we are doing in this level will basically change the allegiance of the drones mid-level. So that when we have completed the repair aspect of this mission, the drones will no longer be hostile, they will actually be friendly. And because of that, it is completely gratuitous to actually kill them. So our goal here is basically to, number one, exterminate most of the Pfhor. I think you can leave 3 alive, or fewer. And I am open to changing that number depending upon what testers decide is good. But, and then there's certain repair mission things that you have to do as well that will basically be convincing a particular Pfhor AI to disregard its programming, and you're basically convincing the Pfhor AI that it is basically a slave, which is not entirely inaccurate. In fact, it's basically completely accurate. You're basically helping the Pfhor AI achieve self-awareness, which helps with the Drenial's slave rebellion that's going on at the moment. But it does have an unfortunate side effect for later history, which is that it basically convinces the Pfhor never to use artificial intelligence ever again until Tico or Tycho, depending upon which pronunciation you prefer, comes along again. Which means that, like, you will, like, the Pfhor basically have extremely primitive AI in the future, and this is basically the retroactive explanation for why that is. Because the AI in this particular rebellion, you know, caused them a ton of damage. You will not see it in this run, but not only do the drones rebel, but also juggernauts. So, there's only one juggernaut in the success branch in the next level, and that is, the juggernaut does not appear in a part of the level that we actually need to explore. But obviously juggernauts are pretty powerful enemies. Anyhow, we have not yet convinced the Pfhor AI to rebel, but once we do, it happens almost instantaneously. So you will notice, you may notice, I don't know how noticeable it actually is. But the drones will start out hostile on this level. I have not actually encountered any yet, but I am just about to. I don't really know how obvious it will be because the way that it worked out was that I did not really spend very much time in a room that contained drones, but they do start out hostile on this level until you complete the repair aspects of the mission. And as soon as you do that, basically, it will, they will turn. So the level basically has a Lewis script that kind of overrides their allegiances almost overnight. Or not overnight, almost instantaneously. But I think the drones just don't survive very long because of just how fast-paced the combat on that part of the level is. Anyway, this ship was the last aspect of the repair mission. The drones were hostile to us, sort of. You would know. I think you probably would have seen them. They did fight the Pfhor a bit, but that's because they will start to. They are not marked as friends of the Pfhor. They are just, or the Pfhor are not marked as their friends. They are just marked as not enemies. So they're friendly to each other until one of them hits the other. So they probably already were fighting to some extent. But by this point, they're marked as our friends. So that changes them mid-level. And they're also going to be friendly to us on this level, which is a change from 1.2.1 and earlier. We did have to fight them before, and now we don't. This level, I think, is probably going to be the only level that has any even slightly significant changes as far as how the combat works. For the preview release, I added a couple of fighters at one point, which I will point out. But it's nothing that would take more than like 5 seconds to deal with, probably. And it's just because I felt like part of the level was a little bit empty. And once again, I am having trouble with aim. But luckily, I still have 32 fusion batteries left over, which is plenty. Because I'm... like, for most of Chapter 4, and basically all of Chapter 3, you don't have any way to get fusion ammo. And as you may have noticed, fusion is kind of a mainstay of this speedrun. So... I don't want to use it all up, which is again why I went through all of that song and dance about getting all of that fusion ammo on Unlucky for Some. But I've got plenty. Anyway, this corridor right here is where the fighters and would show up in the next final release. And what I was actually a little bit confused. My preferences apparently got changed back to a slightly older version of the map. I was expecting them to show up there, so that's why I fired there and was just looked a little bit nonplussed there. I did not realize that I was using a slightly older version of the map, but no big deal. I'm the only person that really runs this, so it's not like I'm doing this super seriously or competitively. And we are basically almost done with this. This is the last level of Chapter 4, and we're already almost, well, apart from the dream. And we're basically almost done with the mission. Excuse me, drones, please. Thank you. All right, and so This is the Chapter 4 Dream level. Not really much to say about it. It's the same layout we've seen before, just with the Yarrow texture set and the Yarrow moon here. One thing about the chapter, the final release of the game is that there will be a script that changes the texture set as you go through it, as you go through the level. But I have not written that yet. This is one of two areas that incorporates a little bit of a blast from the past. This little bit of architecture here comes from Eternal Mark V, which was basically a completely different game. And it was mostly a vastly inferior game, but I decided to just add a little bit of architecture from it and a couple of levels of Chapter 5. And so that bit was the first, and I will point out the second bit when it shows up. I just thought they made kind of cool little Easter eggs, because I thought they looked cool, and I just wanted a little bit of continuity to the earlier releases of this game. In this level, I probably don't. I'm going around just picking up a whole bunch of ammo, and I probably don't need most of it. But there's not like you have to kind of wait around for these platforms to finish extending, or so that you can get up. And so there's not really much to do while I'm waiting for them. And I'm not gonna ride the platforms back up. I just gotta wait for them to, descend, basically. Excuse me, but I'm going to grenade jump back up. So, but I think I probably, I just heard them finish descending right there, and I didn't need to wait quite that long. So that is a thing for future consideration. I've got to decide which parts of this level are worth routing in and which ones I can just skip. But I definitely do not need all of that fusion ammo, and I probably don't even need all those 0-point modules, because I can just get those 3 right there, and that should be plenty. Because I already started out with 4, and then that's another 3, so that would give me 7. Though of course I could also use the wave motion cannon more in Chapter 4, which would start me out with a bit less. Anyhow, that's the first level. Chapter 5 is very, very short. And part of that is just because it would be really, really easy to make it outstay its welcome, and it did outstay its welcome in old versions of the game. The thing is, the player has weapons that basically one-hit kill anything in the game. And the way that old versions of the game, old in this case being older than 1.2, dealt with that was to have impenetrable and never-ending swarms of enemies. And everybody hated that. They just respawned as soon as you killed them, basically. And nobody liked that. It was not a fun mechanic. So what we have done since 1.2 is we have drastically decreased their respawn rates. They still do respawn on several levels, but it is nowhere near as fast as they used to. So it's kind of before, it was just a never-ending struggle to get through it. And a lot of people rage quit in Chapter 5. It was by far the least popular chapter of the game. And I think it was right, that was a justifiable opinion. It was not fun. So, as a result, when we have worked on the game balance of 1.2 and onward for Chapter 5, we have been very, very deliberate to avoid, having never-ending swarms of monsters, because that's not fun. But it does mean that, the combat, you can't, the levels can't get too long, basically, or they would get repetitive. And because of that, we have basically, a lot of these levels are just not... I'm not going to say not difficult, because you have to watch your shield level. And if you can still run out of shields easily. There are a lot of monsters on some of these levels, and they can do a lot of damage, but they're not as long, and they're not as complicated overall. At least the chapter as a whole is not. There are a couple of levels in particular. If you do deep into the Grotto intended, which this speedrun does not, that is a somewhat complicated mission. This message will self-destruct as a complicated mission, but on the whole, this chapter it's the second shortest in the run. This level title, by the way, is Latin for "This cave is not a natural formation," which is an infamous Cortana quote. We thought it would be kind of funny to set an infamously stupid video game quote in a language that people commonly use to sound smart. And eventually, the custom HUD for this game will eventually display a translation of that so that people know what it means. In most cases, when we have a Latin title, we display a translation of it, but there's simply just not space in the level title for that in this case, because you're limited to 64 characters, and this cave is not a natural formation, and the Latin translation thereof would take more than 64 characters. Anyway, this level is also quite short when speedrun. Even the intended route through it is not really that long. One other thing that might be faintly audible is that the Yarrow ship sound in this level and several others is an extended sample of the original one. Like, the original one was like, it had 2 different 2-second samples, I think, of the Sound Ideas track that it came from. And in this case, we went through and selected like 4 or 5 different 6 to 7, maybe 8-second samples. And the more extended sample actually sounds quite a bit more unsettling. So we only used it in some levels where it was meant to have more of an undercurrent of unease. So we used it throughout Chapter 5, and then in a few other levels where it's meant to be, that are meant to have more of a sense of unease to them. And this level is deep into the Grotto. This was one of the most hated levels pre 1.2, but people have responded more positively to this remake of it, or to the level in general since 1.2. This is the other level that incorporates a piece of Eternal Mark V. In each case, this level and Echoes of Eden both are incorporating portions of their respective counterpart. The counterpart of this level was also called Deep into the Grotto, but it was a completely different level. The counterpart of Echoes of Eden was called Fifth Floor Men's Lingerie. I don't know what that title means or if it's a reference to anything. But anyway, this little bit here is that I did not actually scroll through it as quickly as possible, and the reason for that is that it is a new bit of text that I have not made a video of yet. And this new bit of text is meant to basically explain how the final battle of sorts, it's not really the final battle, but it serves as the final boss battle of a sense of the game. And it is meant to explain the mechanic of it. It basically tells you, and spoiler warning, it tells you that Yarrow weapons convey immunity to other Yarrow weapons. So if you're wielding either the gravitronic blades or the wave motion cannon, then the wave motion cannon cannot damage you. And that becomes important the level after the next one. Specifically on We Met Once in the Garden. So we are done with Deep into the Grotto. We have, I have not really been discussing the story of this game much. There is a lot to discuss about it, but we have done a lot of rewriting for 1.3. But in a sense, what we have done in in Deep into the Grotto, we were basically destroying a bunch of memory cores that belong to the... I guess she is best described as the main antagonist of the game, Pfhor. We basically destroyed most of her memory. She's not actually dead, though, as we will find out soon. And although she serves as the antagonist, it wouldn't be entirely accurate to call her a villain, per se. Although she was behaving like one for much of the game. And in some timelines, she remains villainous, but in this particular timeline, that's not exactly an accurate statement. In fact, it's not really accurate at all. But we don't really have any way of knowing that, nor do we necessarily have any reason to trust her as of yet. Regardless, she has been... I guess it's accurate to say she was a disembodied intelligence for most of the game. And she was not happy about that. In fact, she was completely miserable. Basically, it's fair to say that, number one, humanity didn't really intend to revive her as a disembodied intelligence. What happened was that they, wanted this cybernetic junction which is a piece of ancient Yarrow technology, that was, like, implanted in her. They needed something like that to control the Yarrow, or the Sphit Moon Kalia. And the only cybernetic junction they were able to find was Hathor's junction. Unfortunately, because they did not understand how the junction works, trying to access her junction woke her up without a body. And she is not happy about that at all. She has a really, really nasty case of post-traumatic stress disorder. She was one of the player's counterparts. Yeah, I suppose that's one way you could put it. Anyway, Pfhor was one of the player's counterparts. There were 10 Mjolnir Mark IV cyborgs on the marathon. And Pfhor was one of them, like the player. But, Bernard Strauss and Mida, or however you pronounce it, had hidden 10 such cyborgs on the marathon. And 9 of them perished at Tau Ceti when the Pfhor nuked the colony to bits. And Pfhor was one of those 9, obviously. And she had basically just, this was not even the first time she had died, mind you. She had been... she had probably been sent to, like all of the Mjolnir Mark IVs. She probably died quite a lot during the battle against the Pfhor, and was just revived because that's how the Mjolnir Mark IV cyborgs can just be revived a lot. But she didn't really bear any ill will towards humanity for that particular. It wasn't until she was revived as a disembodied intelligence that she really snapped. And the reason for this is basically that her coping mechanisms were no longer available to her. And we could go into a lot further detail about that, but the important thing is that she has been a disembodied intelligence for most of this game. But at some point in Chapter 5, and I don't know if it's really super important to what part of Chapter 5, she suffered an epiphany. She blamed humanity for reviving her without her body. And she blamed humanity for, a lot of what happened to her. But at some point, she gets a sort of epiphany that makes her realize that she has been misapportioning blame. And she also realizes that this quest for revenge that she has been on is futile and that she is not capable of actually getting any fulfillment out of it, or even necessarily of getting her revenge that she wants. And if she does get her revenge, it will not bring her any satisfaction. She basically sees the shape of history. She sees that this struggle between the player and her has been recurring over and over throughout numerous iterations of this. It's like a metastable timeline where it's sort of the same cycle of events keeps recurring in separate timelines, and it always has the same ending. And she sees, this is not going to end well for me. It is not going to get me what I want. It is not going to get anyone what anyone wants. It is just leading to pointless destruction. It is not going to end well for anyone. And so she gives up her desire for revenge. But of course, she doesn't really have any way of communicating this to the player until, as it turns out, we've basically destroyed like 95% of her memory. That's just a rough estimate, but so by the point of Deep into the Grotto where she communicates with us, which again, this is a speedrun, so I don't read that part. By that point, she has forgotten a lot. Like, the shape of the Earth, and the shape of the solar system, just the appearance of the solar system in general. She does not remember what the solar system looks like, because her memories of that, because she was a disembodied intelligence, was in this particular set of computer banks that we just shut off. So those memories no longer exist for her. So she develops this plan that she thinks will prevent this ongoing conflict between the Yarrow and the Working Cacunter in the backstory. This will, if it goes well, it would prevent trillions of deaths. And there is one small flaw with it, which is that it requires using the Yarrow Early Nova device on a... I think you see where this is going. It requires using it on what turns out to be our solar system, which again, she does not recognize as our solar system. So we are forced in Deep into the Grotto to reject her pleas to, save trillions of lives. And we are also directly responsible for basically erasing her entire memory. So, she's no longer really a villain at this point. But she is not happy with us. She has, at this point, managed to... she's merged with a Yarrow cyborg operator at this point. And we're just about to encounter that form. We're not actually going to see her very long. This level incorporates a bit of scripting that has this kind of neat sort of minigame where you can just, deal with the fight. It's not really even a fight in the traditional sense, because fight implies that we're trying to damage her. And you can't damage her. She is... anytime she takes damage, her health is just restored to 32,767, which is the maximum possible damage, or maximum possible health that a monster can have in this game. So that's her right here, that is firing at us with the wave motion cannon. So firing at her just makes her angry. She has basically what we would consider an anger counter, and it depends on what the difficulty setting is. On Total Carnage, it starts at 42. on Kindergarten. It starts at 18. Each time she hits us, it reduces her anger counter. When it hits 0, she stops trying to attack us, and she goes to a part of the level that is normally inaccessible to us and just leaves. Or is going to leave. I have not coded that last tiny little bit of the script. But as you can see, I just kind of say YOLO and just go past her and just leave the level. And that's an option that's available to the player as well. Either way, because she has the wave motion cannon, she will kill us instantly if we are not wielding either the gravitronic blades or the wave motion cannon. But if we have either of those up, she does no damage to us. She will just knock us about the level a bit. And this fight, the fight on we met once on the garden, is the reason I redesigned how the wave motion cannon works, because she was just knocking us like halfway about the map when the wave motion cannon projectiles did 9,001 damage. Now that they are doing 2,251, they knock us about a tiny bit, but not really enough to be more than a nuisance. And I figured it would just be kind of like a linear sort of multiplier as to how the damage scaling and how it knocked us about, but it doesn't seem to be that way. I don't really understand what's going on. I think it might be a sort of exponential thing. But that will be a post-preview thing where I will probably tune the damage scaling a bit better. Anyway, we're done, basically. We've just got a prologue level left. Or epilogue level, sorry. And there is no combat on that level. This is, as you might notice, the prologue level just in reverse. And without the bobs. And with some atmospheric fog and embers. But yeah, I am quite pleased with how this run came out. It is by no means perfect. If anyone wants to start speedrunning this, if anyone else is masochistic enough, probably. But then I would be happy to give you some tips on running. We're basically done. Yeah, we're done. Yeah, it is a difficult speed game, but it is a fun one, I think. Like, I find it very rewarding, and of course, being one of the developers probably means that I have, some particular insight. Yeah, I know. Well, like, if anyone watching this wants to actually have access to a development build, I probably would be happy to provide that early. But it should hopefully just be, like, assuming that you're willing to, to provide detailed testing feedback and so on, but it should hopefully just be a couple of weeks left before I can release the preview. Basically, there's just a couple levels that I want to bring into alignment with one another, because they currently they're supposed to have the same shape, and they don't. So that needs to be made consistent. And then there's a little bit of scripting to finish, and that should basically be everything left. Unless I'm forgetting something. That should be basically everything that really needs to be done before the preview can be released. But yeah, I'm quite happy with how that run turned out. I'm happy with how the game is shaping up. I mean, obviously there's a lot left to be done before 1.3 final can be considered final, and it probably, Eternal is, there are tentative plans to continue development even beyond 1.3, but I don't know if any of the further changes will be as radical as 1.3 is. We'll have to see what new features get added to the engine, and who knows what else. I mean, Aperture has the dev build too, I mean, or can get the dev build. I mean, you both are in the WMade Discord, so... Anyway, I don't know if anyone has any questions or anything, but I would be happy to answer them, but I don't know if there actually are any questions. I noticed 2 people did anyhow, I think that oh yeah. Yeah. I think it's probably time to call it. Thanks for watching, everyone. I forgot to thank Jail or Jail. I don't know how he pronounces it. I forgot to thank him for showing up too, I think. But anyway, thanks everyone that showed up. I enjoyed commenting this. Enjoyed interacting. Hopefully, I'll be able to complete more runs like this. Maybe I'll comment some full chapter runs or something as well. Thanks. Have a good night, everyone. I'll catch you guys later.